On this episode of This Week in Space, Tariq and I talk about our favorite space places, whether it's the Kennedy Space Center, SpaceX headquarters, or some forlorn tar paper shack with rockets. Over the next few episodes, we'll debate the best of the best for you, places you can go. Stay with us.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 82, recorded on October 6, 2023. Our favorite space places. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Bitwarden. Get the open source password manager that can help you stay safe online. You can get started with a free Teams or Enterprise plan trial, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Space, the Our Favorite Space Places edition. I'm here today with the unignitable Tariq Malik, editor-in-chief at space.com. How are you, sir?
Gee, I hope not. That'd be like a bad rocket if I was unignitable.
Well, the way your week seemed to go, I figured it was probably, a good thing to say.
I'm just happy to be here right now.
And why is that, my friend?
Oh my gosh, I had to go get my
Okay,
car.
never mind.
Sorry.
I wasn't really asking. I was just trying to be nice. All right. So it's our pleasure today to tell you that it's just going to be myself and Tariq because, every now and then we just have to have a little dude hang time. And this week, we're going to talk about our favorite space places, for the most part, ones we've been to, because that's only fair. So I just want to say to anybody who's listening or watching, if we don't mention your favorite space place, it's because we haven't been there, okay? So don't take offense if we don't mention the Baku Ringador, Science Museum or something, because it's probably because we haven't visited, because we're always at home working. That's what we do. But most of these you can visit at your leisure. So we've rounded up some of the usual suspects, plus some lesser known joints for your visiting pleasure. They're all cool spaces to go and worship space stuff. But of course, mine will be the best. But before we begin,
wow.
A new space dad joke. Yeah, I know. Right. I slipped that in there, that little prig at you. From listener Donald Moore, who has apparently, he says, adopted our dad space joke philosophy to open his lectures on law at the University of Michigan. And Don, I'm very proud and flattered, but I wonder how your students feel about it. I guess maybe you can ask them sometime. All right, here's Don's joke. Hey, Tariq.
Yes, Rod.
I think I might have used this one before. We'll say, what did the alien say to the first glass of water he saw after landing on Earth?
I don't know. What did that alien say?
Take me to your leader.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got it. It's a metric joke.
Shot.
It's a metric joke.
That's as far as I go with.
Didn't we fight like a Revolutionary War to not have to deal with metric jokes, though? Right.
Well, now I'm not sure you were even. Let's see. When were you born?
77.
77. Okay. Just before that, right after the gas crisis, as I recall, they tried to get the U.S. on metric, and I remember very clearly all the arguing and the late night punditry and all that. But there was, I've said this before, I'm sure, there's a billboard with this stunning young woman on it with her measurements in metric, 64 centimeters, 22 centimeters, blah, whatever the proper thing is. I can't convert in my head anymore. And it said, see, the metric system is useful. And it was the most outrageously sexist ad you can imagine, but it was the early 70s, so that was the kind of thing that people did then.
I was going to say it took you like 5 minutes to go there, but that's okay.
Even with that, we're still on Imperial. All right. As always, we invite you to join Rod's Raconteurs and send us your best or worst space joke. Thank you to Don for that one, and we're counting on the rest of you to step up, because it doesn't have to be good. It just has to be content. And of course, don't forget to do us a solid. Make sure to like, subscribe, and all that other podcast stuff, because we want your numbers. You don't have to listen, just like it. All right, let's go to some headlines. We have a little luxury today since it's just the two of us, so
yes,
we can play with the headlines a bit. So hold on a second. Oh, we had another Virgin Galactic launch. Tell us all about it.
Hey, this one is near and dear to my heart, actually. So as we're recording this episode, we are just a few hours past the successful flight of Virgin Galactic's Galactic 4. And why is it? Yeah. So why is it important to me? Well, because as a Pakistani American, I am happy to say that for the first time in history, a Pakistani astronaut has flown in space. And this is Namira Salim. She's an entrepreneur. She's the first Pakistani woman, let alone Pakistani, to fly in space, and she is one of the founding customers on for Virgin Galactic. And of course, we've got this at space.com, but you can even go out to her own website at namirasalim.com, where you can learn all about her exploits. But she was one of 3 passengers again on this flight. It's their 4th commercial flight, their 3rd, I think, just passenger, like tourist flight, if memory serves. And she wasn't alone. She flew with Trevor Betty, a filmmaker, and another founding customer on the flight, and Ron Rossano, an American astronomy educator. I've actually never met him, but it's nice to see kind of that STEM aspect to the flight. And they took off. They took off at about, I think it's about 11:30 today. Got into space, came on back. Everyone is safe. They're probably having a huge party right now. And way to go, Pakistan! You have your first astronaut, and it was Namira Salim, a woman. Very exciting.
Do you know her personally?
I do. Yeah, I have met Namira several times. I met her at IAC, the International Astronautical Congress, back in 2019. But we had been talking before that. We actually partnered up with her Earth Environmental Awareness project through the United Nations, and we hosted a joint event there several years ago. I think it was even before 2019. So I've known her for the better part of I guess 5 or 6 years now it's been. And just seeing her fly in space was really exciting. In fact, she had invited us to go see it, and we just couldn't get the schedules to line up, from my company's side point. Otherwise, I might still be over there, Rod, watching her come back from space right now.
Well, then that would have given you an even better excuse to be late for the show today. I worked with Namira on a media project for a matter of months, and she had been waiting a long time to get to be able to use that ticket and get it punched for that flight, because I think she was. I think
2000
was like one of the first in,
2006. Yeah. She was. I mean, Virgin Galactic was founded in 2004, and she and Trevor Betty were like the first in the first 5 or 6 people to get those tickets.
So let's see, they've only got another like 117 flights to get through to work off the backlog.
Probably, and some people bought more than one ticket. I think Virgin, Lady Gaga bought a whole flight of 8. And I'm going to point out, this is like their 4th commercial flight, but they've been flying less and less actual passengers. So the last few have all been 3 only, and they're supposed to be able to carry at least 4, 6 people. And I think it's I'm not certain why it is. They haven't really discussed why, aside from I expect it might be a customer experience versus being able to track them, with the astronaut trainer to make sure that they're buckled in right and safe. I could see that as being like something that they've learned they need to fly fewer passengers so that they can get this on. And I guess we'll see how it goes. But so far, they've been flying once a month at least for the most part. And more power to them right now.
Well, and sadly, we're still waiting for Blue Origin to restart New Shepard flights.
That's right. Now they say that they're in
how long it's taken.
They say that they're in the home stretch. They've got the fix-its from FAA kind of all addressed now. We didn't really talk about this in one of in last week's episode, but they do they're getting a new CEO. Bob Smith is out at Blue Origin for a number of reasons, but the failed launch is probably up there as well. But we've got BE4 engine delays, and of course the new Glenn delays too. But not being able to fly for over a year when your next flight is supposed to carry the girlfriend of the founder of your company, with Jeff Bezos's fiance.
Got to keep our priorities straight here.
I mean, it's not a good look. It's not a good look. And so they're making big changes there. And I think the hope is that they'll be able to get things on track a bit faster to address the space tourism backlog that they've got, as well as the other programs that they have underway.
Well, and speaking of those other programs, what also isn't a good look, and this isn't meant to be a criticism, it's a frustration, but to see truckloads of parts and money and material going into the front of these plants like the one they've got at Kennedy and other places, and we keep waiting for that big rocket to come out the back door. It's like, I think, what are you guys doing?
I think Ant has a question. Ant, what's going on? What do you got?
Well, you just mentioned that a CEO was fired from where?
From Blue Origin. Yeah, Blue Origin's longtime CEO, Bob Smith, is no longer the head of that company as of last week.
That's Jeff Bezos' company.
Okay, and Mr. Powell alluded it was because of the failed launches as part of it, right? I'm
sure it was part of it, but they've had a lot of other issues going on in the back. They've had rockets. They had a rocket test failure, right, Rod? Their new rocket engine that they have sold to United Launch Alliance is late.
To other companies, right.
And their new rocket, New Glenn, is also late too.
Okay,
really
so
late.
I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, has anyone else been let go? Sure, leadership should be held responsible, but did leadership try to make some changes prior to being let go? Because sometimes just the people underneath you aren't cutting the mustard either, and
this
make
is
a change.
Getting news from this company is kind of like waiting for an invitation to go to North Korea for a coffee party.
Oh, okay.
It's hard. Yeah. So like everything else, events go in the front door and news doesn't come out the back door very often. So I don't know that anybody knows.
It wouldn't surprise me. Like when they had the rocket engine failure, they've had a lot of issues. They've also had a lot of personnel issues during the pandemic. There was a severe backlash from the Blue Origin team against management about being forced to travel during a national pandemic from Washington, where they're based, to Texas, where they do the launches and the tests from. So there's been a lot of kind of unhappiness there too, separate, like just work and whatnot. It could be better now. No, that was the pandemic was several like the severe parts of it during the shutdown was a couple of years back now. But they also lost a moon lander contract with NASA. SpaceX won the Artemis moon landing contract for at least the first one, and that was another big blow for them at that point in time because they were thought to be the front runners. So,
but I would like to say, in terms of generosity of the public, for as much as SpaceX has done in terms of kind of reigniting the launch market in the United States and other things, Blue Origin has been a little more forward-facing in terms of STEM initiatives. I think certainly with their Club for the Future and the almost $20 million they gave out a couple of years ago.
I was going to say, are you saying that because they gave the National Space Society $1 million?
Well, I mean, it was generous. It was completely unexpected, and we're just one of 19 organizations that got money. But what a gift that was. And it allowed us to do a lot of stuff that we wouldn't have otherwise done. So yeah, and it was also, just so it's said, the NSS turned around and the gross majority of that money is going out to other nonprofits.
Yeah.
That are specifically STEM oriented, because we knew that most of them, since that's what they do 24/7, we're going to do that better than the NSS would. So,
and just for our listeners who may not recall, Blue Origin auctioned off the first flight with Jeff Bezos, and they made about $26 million or something like that after it. And of that,
they looked at it and said, "Oh my God, tax problems." Yeah,
they donated more than half of it to organizations like the Society, like many others, which was really nice to see. So you like to see that.
Yeah. And then we were able to give it to Kids Read and a group in Brownsville that works with underprivileged kids and veterans and so forth to get them careers in the space trade. So anyway, it's all been good. All right, let's move on.
Let's do
Blue Origin to SpaceX.
We'll do these really fast. Yeah.
Oh sure, Starship 2.
Well, just really fast. It was International Astronautical Congress week in Baku, Azerbaijan. That's where the whole industry from all over the world get together. It's a really fun conference if you ever get a chance to go.
Except
Elon Musk,
for the European Space Agency, who I believe declined to attend this year.
Well, that's right, because of the issues between Azerbaijan and oh my gosh, the other country. Oh gosh,
Russia, China.
No. There's territorial issues on the border where they ousted a lot of people there. And so I apologize to everyone affected by that right now. It escapes me, the local politics there. But there was a lot of backlash about for having this conference there. But Elon Musk, in 2016 at this conference in Mexico City, announced Starship, and he was there now 7 years later to showcase that they had their first flight and they're getting ready for their second flight. And he said, and I quote, that there's a decent chance that they're going to be able to fly Starship 2 this year. He said, if the engines light up,
decent chance, yeah.
He said, if the engines light up and the ship doesn't blow itself up, I think we have a decent chance of reaching orbit. I think that's like the basics of any rocket.
Those are pretty good qualifiers, yeah. If it actually catches on fire, that'd be a good thing. I think the country you were looking for was Armenia.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Neighboring Armenia. But just the quick takeaways. They're still waiting on the FAA license. There isn't anything really new from the last big update that the FAA put out. They say that they've addressed everything, but this next flight's going to carry a lot of new things. First of all, they have an upgraded flight termination system because there was a delay between when they activated it when it actually took effect during the April 2023 flight. They're going to do hot staging, which means they fire the upper stage first before separating to ensure a good separation, which did not happen also in that first test flight.
Which, by the way, required changing the interstage structure, which I guess is now integral to one of the stages.
That's right.
And to cut holes in it so that when they do fire up, I guess the flames go out the sides while it's kicking the lower
Elon called
loose,
them
right?
Elon called them vents. It's not an interstage. It's just the adapter between the two stages.
Right.
They didn't build a separate ring. And he says he hopes, quote unquote, hopes that the vents are big enough. And they're going to find out during the test flight itself. And then he did say that they've got plans to upgrade Starship, not just beyond being, 2 times the lift of Saturn V, but close to 3 times the lift of Saturn V with upgrades that they've got planned for the future. But again, he sounds very positive. It seems like they're doing a lot of interesting things, but we're going to have to wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to fly late October, early November, getting all of their ducks in a row with the FAA, but we'll have to see. They need to get that license first. So,
all right.
That was from SpaceX, by the way, but you can actually watch the video at the IAC YouTube page, International Astronautical Congress.
It's pretty clear that Google isn't listening to our show because they love to log me out right in the middle of a story. All right, next up, Prada on the moon.
That's right.
Did you see that one?
I did. I actually, it happened. I've been out on vacation the last couple of days from space.com, and this one popped up during that time. But this came from Jeff Faust over at Space News.
It's an attention getter, wasn't it?
I tell you. So they've teamed up Prada, the fashion brand. My wife, who covers fashion for a living, actually, brought this up to me too, to say, hey, what's up? What's going on with Prada? They have teamed up with Axiom Space, who is in the running to build NASA's Artemis moon suits for the Artemis 3 astronauts to walk around, and they're going to help them design and make them look nice. And if people remember, the spacesuits that Axiom Space first revealed were these really nice, sleek black and orange ones, and they looked really, really great. And I thought they were awesome because I love orange, but NASA said, no, they're not going to be orange and black because we can't see it well on the moon. It's not good.
Well,
for
and if it was black,
dissipation. That's right. So they're going to be white. And then whatever, but Prada's going to make them look really, really nice. And you can imagine the different fashion spin-offs that Prada's going to be able to get from that, like with bags and backpacks and all that fun stuff.
And part of the claim was that they have done so much work in textile and material science and so forth that they would actually be bringing some technology to the game, which I found a little more comforting than just thinking they were going to add little diamond droplets and sequins to the suit or something. Although sequins would be kind of cool.
Bedazzle your spacesuit.
The astronaut wore Prada. Well,
that's a book. That's my book. Patent pending. You all heard it here first. So
it's about time you wrote one. All right. And here's my favorite story of the week. Then we'll go to a break. Quote, alien life discovered and confirmed. Gag me with a spoon.
Yeah, tell me about this one.
So, okay, this is a press release I got because I get, you get press releases from real news organizations. I get press releases from these guys. Melbourne, Australia, October 5th. In an unprecedented scientific breakthrough, Australian researcher Michael E. Whaler, the first ever image of an unknown life form will be made public.
Wow.
Known life form. The extraordinary event potentially provides the answer to a question that has puzzled scientists for centuries. The impact of this image extracted from forensically authenticated footage may forever alter human understanding of the universe, blah, 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 blah. So in brief, this guy was walking his dog who started acting funny in a familiar location, and the result, which is not explained at all, was yet another fuzzy white blob taken with a cell phone. I mean, even in the age of modern technology, UFOs and ghosts still have to appear as fuzzy blobs. No further explanation, but as they made clear, if you buy the book and watch the, quote, earth-shattering, unquote, documentary, all will be revealed.
Well, hey,
they added the release of this image, which underwent rigorous analysis, marks a pivotal moment in human history as it questions the mysteries that lie here and beyond Earth. Now, just to add a little more gravitas, they added this detail.
Yes.
Michael was in the process of archiving images and video clips of Boston, his dog.
The dog's name is Boston. Okay.
Yeah, the dog. That's why it's the Boston event. He apparently noticed the aliens of Boston when he noticed the shape of a sphinx reflecting in Boston's eyes. The distinct features of a human head with the body of a lion were clearly evident in Michael's mind. I don't doubt it. Following Boston's gaze and line of sight, it led Michael straight to the stone wall below the chariot rider mentioned in a previous chapter. So besides being kind of a wonky press release, this whole thing has kind of a what kind of a thing to it.
I'll buy it. I'll take 8, right? I'll give it to my friend.
Right. I had to include it because it was presented like, like a legitimate press release, earth-shattering, history-making, never before in mankind and all that. Normally when we hear UFO reports, it's like, hey, I saw something over there over my cousin's trailer. I won't tell you what it was there for. But in this case, this whole kind of thing. And I was just kind of stunned. And I thought, I'll bet Tariq doesn't get these press releases, but I do.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. Noted.
The banjo music. All right.
Boston the alien dog. I got it. Let's go.
Okay.
Space places. Let's talk about that.
We'll be. Oh yeah, that's right. That's why we're here. We will be back in just a moment. Don't go away. This episode of This Week in Space is brought to you by Bitwarden, the only open source cross-platform manager anywhere, anytime. Security Now's Steve Gibson has even switched over. With Bitwarden, all the data in your vault is end-to-end encrypted, not just your passwords. In the summer 2023 G2 Enterprise Grid Report, they solidified their position as the highest performing password manager for the enterprise, leaving competitors in the dust. Bitwarden protects your data and privacy by adding strong, randomly generated passwords for each account. And you can go further with the username generator, create unique usernames for each account, or use any of the 6 integrated email alias services. You can log into Bitwarden and decrypt your vault after using SSO on a registered trusted device. No master password is needed. This new solution makes it even easier for enterprise users to stay safe and secure with Bitwarden. You can transparently view all of Bitwarden's code available on GitHub. On top of being public to the world, Bitwarden also has professional third-party audits performed yearly, and the results get published on their website. Bitwarden is open source security that you can trust. Share private data securely with coworkers across departments or the entire company with fully customizable and adaptive plans. Bitwarden's Teams organization option is $3 per month per user, while their enterprise organization plan is just $5 per month per user. Individuals always get Bitwarden's basic free account for unlimited passwords. Upgrade anytime to a premium account for less than $1 per month, or bring the whole family with their family organization option to give up to 6 users premium features for only $3.33 a month. This Cybersecurity Awareness Month, keep yourself and help your friends and family stay secure online with Bitwarden. Bitwarden offers a fully featured free plan for everyone, which now includes being able to use hardware security keys or passkeys as a form of two-factor authentication. Bitwarden envisions a world where nobody is hacked and is the only major password manager offering this strong security option for free. At Twit, we're fans of password managers, so get started with Bitwarden's free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. That's bitwarden.com/twit. We've been everywhere, man. Almost everywhere, man. Okay, apologies, Johnny Cash, but our favorite space places. And
That's
as
right.
I mentioned before, if we don't talk about your favorite, it's only because we haven't been there. And I think let's start with one that we both visited and fall in love with, which is the Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah. No, well, I guess are we going to differentiate between visitors like parts and the actual part?
So here's the thing, if you're with press, or in my case, I was actually teaching at some of these places, so we had access to everything.
Yeah.
Civilians, unfortunately, get to go see the theme park side, but you got to pay, I don't know, at this point, hundreds of dollars, I think, to go on the deluxe tour, to go out to the pads and stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why don't we talk about the theme park side first, and then the actual facility for those who want the extra kroners to get there.
I have something to show then. So this is the Kennedy Space Center visitor
Please
complex.
do not bring out the plushy Star Trek Enterprise.
No. It's line 31. Line 31, and on the like the little pictures there, because the Kennedy Space Center is near and dear to my heart because it was the first one that I'd ever been to. And I think we've got a photo of that whole thing. My mom took me there when I was like, I think, here's a picture of like me and
most
my
people
sister.
here don't need to wait for the photo because they're listening. So please.
Oh, that's
proceed.
right. That's right. So what we've got is a photo from when I was 15 years old, and my mom took us to see the great Saturn V at the Kennedy Space Center. And we didn't know at that time, by the way, that when you go on the tours at the Kennedy Space Center, they take like 3 or 4 hours to drive out, and that we were unprepared. So if you're listening and you're going to go, always make sure that you book that time aside. But it was a wonderful
place. You referring to the needed potty breaks, or?
Oh, well, potty breaks, water, right? Taking water with you and all of that, all of that stuff. You
are such a delicate flower. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
But it was formative. Actually, when I was 15, that was the first time I went to space camp too. So we went to like the Kennedy Space Center, and then we went to Huntsville on the way back and did space camp there. And it was a lot of fun then. It was a fun in 2005 when I went again as an adult to see all of the new things that were there. I actually just went last year with my parents. My father had never been there, and I took him to kind of show him all of the things that I do like for a living. These are the different vehicles and stuff like that. And just being able to walk on the hallowed ground of the U.S. space program and see like the VAB, like the 52-story building that has its own weather, these historic launch pads from the tours. They have a really nice Saturn V center there now that's separate, because that picture that I showed in the earlier that we were displayed on the YouTube feed here, that Saturn V is now like suspended inside a full-on like immersive center. It's really, really nice. It's not just outside anymore. And you can go to the Rocket Garden, see the astronaut memorial, and remember all the people that gave their lives in pursuit of space exploration. And if you stay at La Quinta in Cape Canaveral, you can be in the actual hotel founded by the Mercury astronauts. There's a big memorial there to them too. So I try to stay there because it's a lot of fun. Also, there's a bar upstairs. So.
And there's a lot of cool googly signs in Cocoa Beach if you drive up and down the coast strip there. So this is the Kennedy Space Center. We conflated the visitor center and the actual facilities a bit, but if you're there, there's a bunch of things to do. So there's a visitor center, which is, I think at this point, I don't know, $60 or $80 to get into. And if you go all the way to the back, actually, the National Space Society office is right in the back of that facility in the Astronaut Memorial building there. But in between, there's a great gift shop and bookstore. There's I think it's still a space shuttle experience, right?
Yeah, well, there's the space shuttle experience.
Sit in the seat and they blow air in your face, and
Oh, it is beyond that. It is
stuff.
Yeah, I have been told by astronauts that it is like the closest of like the public kind of simulators that you can get to actually launching into space, and then it dumps you out right in front of the entranceway to the space shuttle Atlantis, which is an amazing spectacular.
That is a beautiful display.
Jaw-dropping. I mean, picture this. Like, you get off this experience, you walk through a hall, you're there, and if there's like this wafty music playing, and then these doors open, and they open upward, if I remember, and it exposes the space shuttle Atlantis as if it was actually in space. It's kind of canted to one angle.
Yeah, it's hanging in a big dark room, canted at one angle. I think one payload bay door is open, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
one
it's
facing
the only one that's displayed in the country that looks like it's actually doing its thing in space. The rest of them are sitting on landing gear. So that makes it really special.
I almost cry. I almost cry every time I go in to see it. So,
well, how much does that take? And then
wow,
you go beyond that, and you're right. I mean, they kind of stage it like, if I recall correctly, you're in one area and the doors open. You're in the next area, so you're kind of moved through in groups, so it doesn't stack up too much. And then past that, there's a wall with a very subtle display behind glass of remainders of the Challenger orbiter that they recovered from the ocean floor. That was my crying moment.
Yeah,
because it's like pieces of this thing that took the lives of the 7 astronauts that flew on it, and that they recovered from the ocean floor. And it just reminds you of how dangerous all this is. So that's spectacular. You already mentioned the Saturn V Center. You go in there, and that's a little more of an almost like a Disney type experience, because they've got an audio animatronic mission control or launch control area where, the robots turning around. Hello, audience. We're here to launch a rocket, but it's fun. And again, you're timed in and out of the center, as I recall. And occasionally, if you're there at the right time, they will do events where they actually serve dinners under the Saturn V. But they got a Saturn V on its side hanging. They've got a lunar module. They've got a command and service module, and mission control consoles. So every piece of the golden years, quote unquote, of the space race is there, and a lot of shuttle paraphernalia. So if you want kind of a one-stop shop for having the American spaceflight experience, that's probably it. And we have, I think I put together 20 different places.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get through all these. We can do a part 2, a part 3, but
yeah, we'll have to. But the natural successor. So if you get there, definitely go. And also down at the Cape Canaveral station, which is the larger launch complex just south and east of NASA's Kennedy Space Center. There's a tour that goes down that includes that you can buy. So these bus tours will take you to the VAB, and they take you to Pad 39, and they take you to these other launch pads. And a lot of the older early space race launch pads at this point are like a concrete stool, because they tore down the gantry a long time ago. But you're still standing in the place where Gemini launched or Mercury launched, and it's kind of cool. And they some of the tours, I believe, take you down to one of the launch bunkers, which I had the good fortune. I was doing something for Moon Express.
The Apollo, you go to the Apollo 1 one, and I heard that someone's buying that or leasing it pretty soon.
Well, yeah. So Moon Express at one point was leasing, I don't think it was that one, but it was another one of the bunkers, but it still had the periscope that Von Braun could watch the launches through, and old bits of paraphernalia. It's kind of restricted access because it's filled with asbestos and other carcinogens, but there's some very cool stuff down there. And there's a rather nice Air Force museum down the Canaveral side that you can also visit. And then there's tons of stuff to see in Cocoa Beach if you're interested in the history of the 60s.
Manatees. I've never seen a manatee in like 25 years of space reporting. So, but there's manatees there.
Oh, the manatees.
And of course, Disney and Universal Studios.
If you want a real thrill, go to the Titusville Mall. You ever go to the Titusville Mall?
No, I go to Merritt Island Mall. Is when I'm there.
Titusville Mall at the time, this was about 20 years ago, literally looked like a collection of mobile homes.
Yeah,
the ceiling was about 8 feet tall, and it had these little kind of temporary looking things off each side. Most of them were closed even then, and I thought, this is not a mall as I know it. But there's
nice used bookstores in Titusville, though, and there's a really great flea market on Route 1. Yeah.
Titusville has grown up. All right, Johnson Space Center. So let's again differentiate. There's the Johnson Space Center proper in South Houston, which isn't really Houston, but Lyndon Johnson made it Houston for reasons of his own. So there's kind of the city of Houston, and then this drain pipe that goes down to the bottom of Texas proper, and there's the Houston Space Center, Johnson Space Center. So there's that, and then across the street is Space Center Houston, which is a museum, so it's off the actual grounds. Now, Johnson also had a Saturn V on display that was also outside, which now has a less impressive than Kennedy, but still cool metal building over it. It was not good for the Saturn V for them to store it outside all those years because it was starting to erode and corrode, and there were birds nesting on the rocket edges and stuff. But if you got there at the right time of day and stood at the base of the hill it was on, white puffy clouds would come up behind it, accented over a bright blue sky, and it was the most incredible visual imaginable of a Saturn V. But
I have to admit,
they saved it.
I enjoyed seeing the Saturn V outside, right off of NASA Route 1 or 1A, whatever that was, that road that goes off. But I have to admit that if I had to pick top 10 or top 2, that Johnson probably wouldn't be at the top, largely because, I haven't been there in forever. And I think it's a lot different now. When I went last, the rocket was still in the big shed, but they hadn't added all of the new things that they have now. So like the new stuff is they have the space shuttle carrier plane there with a mock-up of the shuttle.
Right, but that's not where the Saturn V is. It's across the street at Space Center Houston. Yeah.
Well, they're kind of you take the shuttle right from the
they're conjoined.
Because it's you get there by going to Space Center Houston to get to see the Saturn V, as I understood it. Is that not how it is?
So you're right. So I was there just a few years ago. So you're right. They have the shuttle carrier plane with a mock-up of the shuttle mounted on it.
And I think there's a Falcon 9 first stage there too, if memory serves. So
that might be new. In Space Center Houston proper, which is the museum side, you go into the main area, and there's a lot of kids exhibits there. But there's an auditorium off to the side that has the original podium that Kennedy gave his Apollo moon speech from sitting there, which is incredible if you're into history. And then you go through the other side of that into the Apollo gallery, and so the main part of Space Center Houston was done, it looks like every other space kids museum you've ever been to. You go into the Apollo gallery side, and the noise level goes down, the lighting goes down. It feels to me like the temperature goes down, although that may be my imagination. But it is this wonderful Disney designed experience of steps from Mercury through Apollo. So they've got, small mock-ups of rockets. They've got a Gemini capsule overhead with Ed White hanging off a tether. Then they have this wonderful diorama on the right side as you're walking through of the lunar roving vehicle with an astronaut next to it, doing what they did during the moonwalks. All kinds of other exhibits curve around to the right. And then when you get to the end of it, they've got a full-scale Skylab mock-up.
Yeah.
You can walk, at least when I was there last, you can walk inside of.
You missed the most exciting part.
What?
And that is the Galileo shuttlecraft from the original Star Trek series.
That wasn't there when I was there. I did miss that. Which
they have now too. And that one was a thing that was a prop lost to time that got refurbished here in New Jersey by a Trek fan and then donated to the Space Center Houston as an educational inspiration tool.
Well, a Trek fan and a lot of devoted volunteers. It was
and fundraisers
effort. Yeah. That was huge. I remember they did that because that thing was just plywood and glue. It wasn't anything fancy. So it's amazing they were able to bring it back. There wasn't much left of it. So that's the museum side. Then if you pay for a tour ticket, you can go over to the Johnson Space Center side. Yeah. Now, to be clear, anybody can go to the Saturn V. You just drive up or take a shuttle. But if you want to go into Mission Control and into those other areas, you got to buy a ticket. And unless, of course, you're special like me, when I was teaching executive education training there, here's my little humble brag moment. In 2010, 2011, we were taking teams of 10 or 20 executives, C-suite executives, and teaching them innovation through the eyes of the space program. Blah, 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 blah. The cool part was back then, Mission Control hadn't yet been restored. So they just gave us access to it. I mean, so this is the Apollo Mission Control. The Shuttle Mission Controls on the other side was at that point still the tail end of Shuttle Mission Control. We were in the Apollo side that was essentially mothballed. The flight manuals were still on the shelves. I got to project Apollo 13 on the same screens they watched those mission details on. sitting in Gene Kranz's seat with a red phone next to my hand, thinking, I wanted to stand up and say, failure is not an option, even though he didn't actually say that. But it was very cool. Since then, they've restored that beautifully, and so that clowns like me can't go sit in Gene's chair, and it's all roped off now, but it was lovingly restored. Did I tell the cigarette story before?
No, I haven't heard it. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. And
so
have you heard the cigarette story?
Oh, who cares? So
Wow.
they restored it. You'll see. So they restored it beautifully. And I mean, because we were trying to raise money during this educational program, this executive education program, to help restore it. And I asked through the Spectacular agreement we signed, can we give you guys money to start towards a restoration? They said, we don't have a mechanism to receive the money. Well, somebody figured it out. They got millions. They sent the consoles out to the Kansas Cosmosphere for restoration because they're filled with asbestos and toxic oils and the transformers and all this stuff. It is jaw-droppingly beautiful. However, they wanted to make it look genuine. They said, we got to have cigarette butts in the ashtrays, because everybody smoked back then, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the EPA said, you can't do that, or Texas Health or somebody, because that's carcinogenic. And they said, well, there's got to be a way around this. So they weren't allowed, they could still get the little beanbag ashtrays put on the consoles. They weren't allowed to put fresh cigarette butts there. But when they pulled the control consoles out, underneath the lifted floor where all the wiring conduits were thousands of Chesterfield cigarette butts
that had slipped through the
right. And because they were original, they were able to grab those, spray them with some varnish, and stick those in the ashtrays.
Wow.
Although you don't smell them, you can see the genuine detritus of the space age in the ashtrays. So anyway, that was a long aside, but I highly recommend, if you have the time and the cash, to take that extended tour, because like you said about Kennedy, this is hallowed ground.
And it goes through it. Actually, this is where the astronauts train, and that tour, I believe, goes through like an elevated walkway with windows that look down on the simulators and whatnot. If memory serves, right? Because I've been on that floor and seen the tours walking by and looking down at the different things. And of course it's all different now with different vehicles, for them to train on than the shuttle era. But right. It is something to see, because they're always working there. At all hours. So
much more to say about this, but we'll save that for another time. Let's go to a quick break, and we'll be right back with the National Air and Space Museum. All right. So this is the big granddaddy.
Yeah, are we gonna pick how many we're gonna get through? Maybe we can get through 5.
It's so embarrassing.
This is because we're on like number 3.
I know,
and I think we should get Starbase in here if we can.
Well, but we got to talk about the National Aerospace Museum.
No, yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's the jewel in the crown of the U.S. space program, and we haven't even gotten close to talk about any other countries either, which we must at some point. But the NASM is in Washington D.C. I hope most of you have been there. If you haven't, it's a must-do. Last time I was there, about 60 or 70% of it was closed, so I just got to see the main gallery.
It's reopened now. I've seen it. It's pretty
reopened.
Nice, so, yeah. This
was around right around the time of Apollo, but in a different form. But Michael Collins, the pilot on the command module pilot on Apollo 11, was part of his career path after Apollo was to go run the NASM, and he oversaw a massive redo that's just breathtaking. And of course, it's not just space; it's flight as well. But it's the place to go if you want to see it all.
And we should point out just really quick that if you're thinking about the Smithsonian, and if you want to see planes like the space shuttle, there's a different center that we're going to also talk about in this section. There's the Smithsonian Museum on the Mall, which is the main one that people think
DC,
about. And then there's the Udvar-Hazy Center, which is at the airport at Dulles. No, at Ron Reagan. Anyway, it's
I haven't actually been there. So why don't you tell us about it, as long as you brought it up?
Oh,
I've
sure.
visited.
So the last time I was there was, this is going to date me a little bit, was when they were getting ready to ship Discovery, the space shuttle Discovery there, because that is where Discovery, as the most flown shuttle, is on display as if it's just landed and rolled to a stop. And the Enterprise was there, the first prototype that NASA had built that didn't fly in space, was originally there as the first one that they built. And that one is here in New York. at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. But Udvar-Hazy has like all of the historic, planes and that are too large to fit in a museum.
It's like the SR-71 is
exactly.
there.
The SR-71 is there. The space shuttle, which is there, it's a lot bigger than you think, 220 feet long.
Oh my God.
So you can fit a bus in the payload bay, right? And you don't get that scope until you see them in person. And I don't think we said that during the Kennedy Space Center one, but the sheer size of the space shuttles themselves on their own will impress you, let alone the other vehicles that you get a chance to see there.
Well, and if I may make a quick comment, and we probably won't get to it, but the California Science Center in downtown Los Angeles has the Endeavour, right?
Exactly. They have the Endeavour
there, which has for years been sitting in a big tin shed. I mean, it's not an attractive display particularly, but it's in landing configuration. And the cool part is you can walk underneath it. Mm-hmm. And then that's when you get this overwhelming impression of the seeming acres of heat shield tiles above you. So I've seen most of the shuttle displays. That one is the one that almost gives you stomach cramps because it's so amazing how huge that thing is.
Yeah. And
however, it's now being moved. It's closed, or is going to be closed soon. I think it's closed now because they're moving it to a new building they're putting together, which is a vertical launch display, which is going to be incredible. So they've got a shuttle, they've got an external tank. Solid rockets are going to be delivered this week or next week when you're in Los Angeles with me.
Yeah.
And
spoiler alert.
They're going to put this thing up in vertical configuration with a building around it. Unfortunately, they're not going to have dry ice vapor coming off it, which I specifically asked for, but I don't think they cared what I thought. But that's going to be pretty remarkable. But I just had
that's all right. You can actually walk underneath the Enterprise at the Intrepid as well, and you can look at it from like nose on down, which you can kind of like stare it in the face. But it is nice. It's good that you mentioned the California Science Center because even if we didn't get to it, that space shuttle exhibit when it's complete is going to be really interesting because it's another unique display to see it in launch position with an external tank, with the twin solid rocket boosters that you don't see at these other ones. But what you will see at Udvar-Hazy is one of the most storied space shuttles in history, when you're out there. And I believe they used to have shuttles to go from the main ones, but I don't think that they do that anymore between the main Mall 1 and Udvar-Hazy. But the nice thing,
to be clear, shuttle buses.
Shuttle buses, yes. Sorry, shuttle buses. That would get you there. But it is really nice to see all of the vehicles there. Actually, when NASA had their 50th anniversary party, it was at the Udvar-Hazy Center, and in there, and Neil Armstrong gave a talk way back then. And
I'll bet you were invited, weren't you?
I think that we muscled our way in. I think that the managing editor at the time called to complain to ask where our invitation was because it didn't come for the 60th anniversary. I can tell you that. So,
darn it.
But getting back to the Smithsonian proper, they actually just renovated the entire museum. There is a Beyond Earth like section that includes things like Artemis, things like the commercial spaceflight types of things. Spaceship One is hanging from the rafters next to the Bell X-1 supersonic plane. You have a recreation of the Wright Flyer, I believe, or it's mostly the original Wright Flyer is there, and there is a model of the Enterprise that they lovingly restored.
Oh,
the space shuttle,
not a model. The
Starship Enterprise.
Right.
There is a model.
So that's at the entrance. At least when I last went, it was near the entrance, and that, just to be clear, is the 11-foot Enterprise from the original series.
Show. Yeah.
So that's like Shroud of Turin level kind of stuff, and it is beautifully restored. It's lit, so the blinky lights are on. And you can see very clearly, as you could if you paid attention when you were watching the series the first time, that each of the navigation blinky lights is about the size of a small town. But scale aside, it's quite beautiful to see, and it's fun to see it all.
And when I was a kid, it used to be in the gift shop, and now it has a place of honor, which I think is really nice. So it was in the gift shop. It took them a while. Yeah. But there was one other thing about the Smithsonian that I wanted to highlight. Oh, Skylab.
Oh, yeah.
you can walk through a section of Skylab there, which is
that's vertical in that.
And it's vertical.
Displayed horizontally in Houston, but it's vertical there, right?
Yeah, and I remember that is one of the things that really struck me is walking through like the models of them, or the ones that use the original cases from the Saturn rockets that then they outfit it like it was going to look for a Skylab, where you can see what the shower looked like, right. That Frank Borman had with his like mugging for the camera photo.
That wasn't Borman, that was Conrad.
Conrad, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh,
Frank Borman would never mug for the cameras. He'd glare if you took a picture of him during.
All my friends are rolling in their graves now that I got that wrong. I'm so sorry. Your
everybody.
Friends
shouldn't be in graves yet. We got to go to a break, so stick with us, and we'll be right back for the big finale. All right, so I'm ashamed to admit I have not been to Starbase. Not only have I not yet been invited to Starbase, I haven't had a reason to go down. You, however, because you have been there.
Yes.
And tell us all about it. Twice. Go ahead and rub it in. Hold on. Let me cut my arm and rub a little salt in there. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
Ow.
Well, okay, so we talked earlier that we could pick and choose space places all day. I mean, I think we've gotten through like 3 of like 20.
It's embarrassing.
Just in the US here that we were looking at, let alone like around the world. So if we have to pick one to end on, I kind of want to talk a little bit about Starbase because of 2 things. Number one,
I've been there.
I've been there, but twice. But number 2 is that of all the places that we've been to, that we've mentioned here, they are all very they have a lot of history to them. They have a lot of weight to them. Several are active, places that the industry is using. NASA trains its astronauts at Johnson. They launch rockets and astronauts from Kennedy Space Center. But Starbase, which is in South Texas, at the very, very tip of Texas, if you look at a map, you will see SpaceX's Starbase facility at the end of Boca Chica Beach. It's like a state park, I believe, or state beach, and it's near the town of Brownsville. And if you're looking to make travel, I highly suggest flying into McAllen, Texas, because it's a bigger town and you can get rental cars a lot easier. And then you drive for an hour or 2 or whatever it is, and you get out to the coast. And I have never been closer to a rocket without going through security than I have at Starbase, because it is right off of a state road.
That anybody can walk up to.
Anybody can go through. And in fact, Ant, if you use any of the pictures, I think on lines 28, 29, or 30, if we're going to highlight them for the video, just to let people know about, because I was struck. I went in 2019 for an initial Starship 1 reveal. And at the time, SpaceX didn't have a lot there, but they had like a test stand for some of their earlier prototypes, like their Hopper prototypes for Starship. And again, in April of 2023, to see the first Starship launch. And
is that you?
That is me across the street from the world's biggest rocket. It must be like 100 feet, maybe 200 feet. That you can just stand there.
Look how studly you are with your hands on your hips, thinking you have the world's largest, rocket, but go ahead.
It is. You were talking about kind of like the feeling of being at this place. So here's, in another view, it wasn't just me that was there. It was all of these people that either love SpaceX or they love space, and they just pull over to the side of the road with RVs, with there was a truck with the SpaceX flag flying, and it's a public beach, so people are out there with their grills and they're like having picnics. And some people brought their boring flamethrowers and
boring company.
They're boring company, yeah. They're boring company flamethrowers and their SpaceX helmets for the spacesuits, and they let me borrow them. So
I was going to say, you said some people, but that looks an awful lot like you.
Yeah, it's a photo of me holding one of those flamethrowers and the helmet with Starship behind me. But I mean, it is an otherworldly experience to be able to get that close to an active space program. And you can just go there and enjoy it, or you could then go to the beach, and then it's not that far away. It is just an interesting thing, and the the spirit of the people that are there at any given time. Like it's like a party, but everyone is like they all know the same people, even though they're strangers. Does that make sense? A bit.
Yeah.
Like everyone is like there for each other as much, to enjoy this really unique thing. And I met people who go there after failed tests that SpaceX had, and they just pick up debris,
souvenirs,
and souvenirs, just to take home. And I don't think you're supposed to do that, but it's a public beach. And in fact, the night of the failed test, I went to the beach on South Padre Island, which is where I stayed to watch the launch across the bay. And there were people walking the beach looking for pieces of the Starship to wash up. And I'm
any other beach people would be looking for seashells, but here they're looking for little twisted bits of metal and detritus or this exploded rocket, which is pretty cool.
And so the reason that I wanted to bring it up is because of two things. Number one, it is an active place where things are changing all the time, and you can see it upon multiple visits. When I was there, SpaceX had a giant tent. And when I went again the second time, they had an entire VAB to hold an actual Starship rocket, super heavies. There were multiple rockets by that point at their, just waiting in the wings in different stages that you can see on the flight coming in if you're sitting on the right side of the plane. And it's just an interesting part of the country to see, and see how SpaceX has been affecting an economy overall, because you get a lot of tourism. South Padre Island, known for spring breakers, now known for, do you call them SpaceXers? SpaceX breakers? I don't know, but it's just a really neat place to go. And there's even a bar. Do we have it on a link here? There's a bar. Starbase Brewery.
Starbase Brewing.
Yeah.
Which actually I put in a link to their website because that's some of the best images. We should add, there's been some tension between people that lived there before SpaceX arrived and SpaceX. A lot of the houses were bought up and vacated. Some people didn't want to leave. And so there is some tension there. But at the same time, this has been an amazing financial lift for one of the poorest parts of the country, because that part of Texas has historically really been heavily impacted by any downturn in the economy and has never really flowered. It's always been a place where people struggled. And one way or the other, whether it's direct employment or through, people that work at Starbase, living and doing thing in Brownsville and surrounding areas, it's been a real boon to that part of the country.
There are environmental concerns, though, and I think we'd be remiss without saying that, because of the fact that it is a bit of a refuge for wildlife. And SpaceX originally, got approval to launch Falcon Heavy rockets from there.
Oh, I thought it was Falcon 9s.
It was Falcon 9s and Falcon Heavies, and then they scaled up to a new vehicle.
And without saying anything, they said, "Oh, by the way, it's going to be Starship, which is a gajillion times bigger and heavier."
That's right. So that was what I had to talk about. That I don't know if you had any questions about it, but I don't have questions. It's a really nice place to be, to see like real tests over time, because of the public
a suggestion, which, as you know, which is once they get going, if the FAA ever lets them have a pass to move forward. And to be fair, the FAA has issued launch licenses with a pretty broad band of understanding and consideration of the past, and probably live to regret it. So they're going to be a little more careful now. But when they're flying out of there on a regular basis, you and I,
let's go
through our companies. Now, wait a minute, are going to rent full time a condo down there, a little 1-bedroom condo. I'll sleep on the sofa or out in the patio and with the mosquitoes, so that we have a place to hang out in between launches, and we'll just go there and like spend our time sitting on the balcony eating Fritos and watching the.
There are people that do that now,
yeah, but this is for us, man. So this way you can escape that awful New York crammed up lifestyle you've got, and car inspections and all the drama, and you could just go down there and we'll just spend half our time being inebriated and watching the rockets go. What do you say? It'll be like
I'm with
the
you on
opening
watching the rockets
chapter.
go.
It'll be like the opening chapter of any Ray Bradbury story where he goes on for 9 pages about the smell of October and the barbecues and sneakers running through wet grass and rockets, the flame of rockets in the distance. It looks like I'm going to have to...
I would probably join y'all for that.
Hey, you are more than welcome, man. You come on.
That sounds
so he compared what we were talking about
right.
earlier on. He said, "Oh, it sounds like a tailgate party," and I thought only Ant.
That's exactly what a tailgate experience sounds like.
What
you go to a tiny town.
Dignify this by elevating it to sports, right?
That's the part. I mean, I met people that drove in like Winnebagos out there and just pulled off to the side to watch the launch. There's a campground that you can just go camp and then watch the launch, and then you don't have to go anywhere. It's just there.
You're just there. So. It sounds exactly like Clemson, South Carolina may have about, I don't know, 50,000 residents, something like that. It's really small. But when it's a game time, there's about 200,000 people there. And no one is a stranger. You can literally walk through and not go hungry or die of thirst because everybody's just shoving food in your face, shoving drinks in your face. They know you even though they don't know you. And this, what you just described sounds exactly like that.
Yeah. There's a lot.
Except there's more alcohol at a tailgate event and people don't roll their eyes when they see a Clemson flag.
Okay, well, bring me to this trip and I will change the culture.
The one thing that you have to do, Ant, is make sure you do not leave your car at Starbase when they launch.
Oh yeah,
when they launch the Starship,
maybe because
there was one group of people, of photographers that left their van there with all the cameras on, and then it launched and all the debris.
Yeah, thinking they're going to get that great shot.
But there was conversation. I don't know how well founded, but there was conversation that may have been a deliberate act. I don't know why you would do that.
Yeah, it sounds like they were trying to get these shot, quote unquote, but no.
It's a great press moment afterwards to show your car all smashed up.
They sell a T-shirt with the silhouette of the destroyed car.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, we talked about the launch pad that they used and how that was ill-advised not to have a flame trench or some kind of deluge system or whatever. But, if you're at the Kennedy Space Center to see a rocket launch, you don't get that close to the launch complex.
No,
because
and if you're at the Kennedy Space Center for a rocket launch and someone leaves their car like parked by the rocket, they don't launch that day. They scrub and then they send the National Guard out you. So it is a different environment entirely. It's just
you just got to be aware and you got to know. And I just have to give a quick preview before we go. I wanted to talk about the Marshall Space Flight Center and Space Camp because I've got a great almost throwing up in front of the nuns story, but that'll have to wait. We got JPL, we got Armstrong, we got SpaceX and Hawthorne.
Yeah.
Vandenberg, which I will say just briefly, like what you're talking about, Vandenberg's much larger, obviously, the Starbase. This is Vandenberg Space Force Base on the West Coast in California, Central California. But there's places you can go and just park alongside a rural road and watch these rockets take off from just a couple miles away. There's a train stop there. So that's another place where you can go see launches comfortably and enjoyably. And so many other things.
Wallops isn't even on here. Wallops is my favorite. So
well, I'm sorry. Who didn't have time to come in and add things to the list this week?
Oh, that's right.
I left you slots until this morning. I will say, okay, let me just close on this. This is a tourist spot of convenience. If you happen to be in Huntsville, which we'll talk about next time, if you go into town and this photo is on line 64. There's a shop there called Used Tire World of Huntsville. And hanging outside the shop on what looks like a metal gallows is a 3/4 scale mock-up of the early lunar module.
Look at that.
So a bunch of us got wind of this, and I started this conversation group with some space people I know. We got to get this thing off of there. So we're trying to, clearly this was a mock-up made by Grumman at some point. This isn't just something somebody threw together.
It's got a happy face on it.
That's the thing. It's been totally defaced. It's just hanging there. So the owner who we spoke to, who is not interested in selling or leasing it, claims, and I love this, we found it in a dumpster outside Huntsville. Well, first of all, it wouldn't have been there, I don't think. And second of all, you don't put that whole thing in a dumpster in one piece. For one thing, it wouldn't fit. And for another thing, It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it fell off a truck, Rod.
Yeah, exactly. It probably would have been at Grumman. So how it got there, we don't know. I suspect it was absconded with in the dark of night, but it's a real shame. It's kind of a cool local curiosity, but as a famous guy with a hat and a whip once said, that belongs in a museum, because there are very few of that original prototype left. As you see, that's got 5 legs instead of 4. It's got the spherical crew cabin instead of the planar one. So there's a lot of reasons that should be taken. It just looks like they did a Wild West hanging. All right, we gotta go. But it's been lovely having this time with you, Tariq. I always enjoy it when we
will have a part 2, and I want to hear from you, dear listeners, what your favorite space places are, and maybe we're gonna hit those in part 2 or part 3 or part 4, because there's so many places that you can go.
There are, and I can't wait. I mean, I really want to tell people about places like the Kansas Cosmosphere, which is the most incredible little space museum you've never heard of or been to. And I want to talk about wallops. Yeah. So you and wallops. I'm going to wallop you. So thank you for joining us for our first semi-annual beatdown over the best space places to visit. Hopefully we'll see you there. Actually, we should arrange a field trip. That's what we should do.
Yeah. Yeah, we can.
And we'll do a broadcast from the field and drive Ant absolutely crazy. So Tariq.
Yes.
Where can we follow you these days?
Well, you can follow me on space.com as always, or if you like video games, you can follow me at Spacetron Place on YouTube. But
I still can't get through that without a giggle. Yeah.
But next week I will be at the Space Economy Summit that is being held on October 11th and 12th by The Economist in, get this, fabulous Los Angeles, California, Rod, and I'm going to be visiting you, whether you like it or not, and staying at your boat, and it's going to be amazing. And so hopefully I'll get a chance to visit some folks over at JPL too, and we're trying to work all that out. It's not often, but I'm looking forward to what looks to be a very interesting summit by the space economy, or by the Economist, because we're going to be talking about new like what's coming up after the space station, the new economies, the new restrictions and regulations, space debris as well, and it should be fun to check out. So I encourage everyone to check it out.
And by the way, Andy Aldrin is going to be there, so we should hook up with him at some point, because he's a lot of fun to hang out with. That'll be a great time, and I can't wait to see your panel with what do you have, 112 people in 20 minutes.
I'm talking to folks from it's going to be exciting. I'm talking to folks from Sierra Space, from Vast, from Axiom, about the future of space stations beyond the International Space Station. So keep watching that space, because we got to go somewhere, and after 2030 it's not going to be the ISS.
Yeah. And of course, you can always find me at pilebooks.com and at astromagazine.com, where I hang out in my slimmer virtual existence. Don't forget to drop us a line at twis@twit.tv. That's TWIS at twit.tv. We welcome your comments, suggestions, and ideas, honest to God. And don't forget to check out space.com. The website's in the name. And the National Space Society at nss.org. Both are good places to do your space worshiping or satisfy your cravings or spend money, because space.com is free. We like to charge membership. New episodes of this podcast published every Friday, available on your favorite podcatcher and everywhere, including YouTube and Podbean, Spotify, and Google podcasts and Apple podcasts and all kinds of stuff. So please check those out. Be sure to subscribe, tell your friends, give us reviews, and love us. We'll take what we can get. You can also head to our website at twit.tv/twists. Don't forget, you can get all the great programming on the Twit network ad-free on Club Twit, along with a lot of other cool stuff, and access to the Club Twit Discord, which has a lot of extras that you don't get otherwise. And it's $7 a month. And I mean, really, what can you do for $7 that's better than hanging out with me and Tariq and all the other people at Club Twit? Because we're fun. You can also follow the Twit Tech Podcast Network at Twit on Twitter and on Facebook, and twit.tv on Instagram. Thank you, and we'll see you next week when we have Joe Rao, famed astronomer and speaker, to come talk to us about the eclipse. It's going to be the day after our podcast next week.
That's right. Solar eclipse incoming.
Annular eclipse, the hole in the sky. We'll see you then. Take care, everybody.
Come join us on This Week in Enterprise Tech. Expert co-host and I talk about the enterprise world, and we're joined by industry professionals and trailblazers like CEOs, CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, every acronym role, plus IT pros and marketeers. And we talk about technology, software plus services, security, you name it, everything under the sun. You know what? I learn something each and every week, and I bet you will too. So definitely join us. And of course, check out the twit.tv website and click on This Week in Enterprise Tech to subscribe today.